The Great Pyrenees had been blocking the back door for 3 days. They thought he was being territorial. He wasn't protecting his space. He was protecting hers. Everything looked normal that morning. The yard looked normal. The dog knew it wasn't. Diane and Patrick Weston had a 10-month-old daughter named Rosie and a 4-year-old Great Pyrenees named Bear, 112 pounds of white double-coated livestock guardian, the kind of dog bred across centuries to assess threats independently and act on that assessment without instruction. He had been placed with their family through a reputable breeder specifically for his mellow, family-oriented temperament. He had lived up to that recommendation completely for 4 years. Then Rosie started crawling, and Bear changed. The change was specific. It was not generalized anxiety. It was not broad behavioral disruption. It was one thing. He would not let Rosie approach the back door of the house. Not the front door, not the stairs, not any other point of transition in their home. Only the back door. He positioned himself in front of it, and when Rosie crawled toward it, he moved in front of her and sat down. Rosie found this interesting rather than distressing. She was the kind of baby who regarded obstacles as invitations. She would redirect, try a different angle, push against Bear's substantial flank with her small hands. Bear absorbed all of this with the composure of an animal that has decided something and does not require the decision to be validated. Patrick thought, he's chosen a space to guard and the baby is encroaching on it. He told Bear to move. Bear moved aside for Patrick and then repositioned when Rosie resumed her approach. Diane thought, it's the livestock guardian instinct. He's managing her the way he'd manage a lamb. She had read about this. She had not expected it to apply to a back door specifically. On the second day, Patrick tried letting Rosie reach the door and opening it to show Bear that the yard was fine. Bear moved out of the way for Patrick and then, when Rosie began to crawl through the opening, stepped sideways into her path again. Patrick said out loud to his dog, "What is your problem?" Bear looked at him. Then he looked at the yard. Patrick looked at the yard. He did not see anything. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you are in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. On the third day, Diane was working in the kitchen while Rosie had floor time in the living room, with Patrick watching. Patrick's phone rang and he stepped into the hallway for the call. He was gone for 4 minutes. Bear moved immediately from his usual position in the corner of the living room to the space in front of the back door. Rosie, who had been heading toward her stacking cups on the playmat, changed direction, as babies do, and headed toward the door and the dog in front of it. By the time Patrick came back, Bear was sitting directly in front of the door, with Rosie pressed against his side, her hands in his fur, both of them stationary. Patrick stood in the doorway and looked at the image in front of him, the largest dog he had ever owned, solid white and massive, and his 10-month-old daughter against him like she had found a wall that was warm. It was, by any visual measure, something you would want to photograph. It was also in his gut, something that was not finished being explained. He went to the back door. He opened it. He stepped out into the yard. He found the wasp nest in the gap between the deck boards and the foundation skirting on the left side of the back steps, accessible at exactly the height of a crawling baby's face. It was a large nest, a late-season nest, the kind that produces the most aggressive defensive behavior in the days before cold weather arrives. It had been there on the evidence of its size for several weeks. Bear had been positioned in front of the door, on the evidence of the timeline, since approximately the day the nest reached a size that put it at a concentration detectable to an animal with his olfactory range. Dr. Aaron Fisk, veterinary behavioral science at Mountain States University, was contacted through his public research inquiry line and confirmed what Patrick suspected. Great Pyrenees were selected across generations for the specific ability to identify and assess threats to charges in their care without human direction. The chemical signature of a large active wasp colony, including the alarm pheromones released by a nest under environmental stress in late season, is detectable to a working livestock guardian breed at ranges that would seem implausible to a human unfamiliar with canine olfactory science. Bear had not been guarding the door because of territory. He had been guarding the door because he had smelled what was on the other side of it, and understood, with the centuries-old certainty of his breeding, that the small, crawling creature in his care should not go there. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. The nest was treated and removed by a professional pest service on a Thursday afternoon. Patrick watched from the window with Rosie on his hip while the service did the work, and he thought about the 3 days of behavioral puzzles he had been offering rational explanations to, while Bear had been, the entire time, operating on information Patrick simply did not have access to. He thought about the moment on day 2 when he had looked at the yard and not seen anything, and Bear had looked at the yard too, and the look on the dog's face, if a dog's face can be said to hold a look, had been something like patient understanding that the limitation was not the dog's. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. The back door is open now. Rosie goes into the yard with supervision, which she always did, and with the additional protocol of checking the foundation skirting and the space under the deck steps, which they do now and will continue to do. Bear monitors the yard from the back step with the long attentiveness of a working dog at his post. He does not block the door anymore. The thing he was blocking it against is gone. His job at that threshold is complete, which does not mean his job is complete, only that the door is no longer the location of it. Rosie crawls toward him across the deck with the persistence of a baby who regards a large white obstacle as something to climb. He absorbs this with his characteristic patience. He was bred for animals that are small and determined and not fully aware of the hazards around them. He has found in Rosie a charge for whom all 3 of those conditions apply perfectly. He lowers his head and lets her grab his ears and does not move. He is very old at this job. He is very good at it. He simply does it without being asked, in the backyard of a house in the suburbs, in the afternoon light, the way his kind has always done. The next story involves a dog no one would have chosen for this work. A 14-year-old rescue with one good eye and a hip that had started to go. Who did it anyway?